folks. You're listening to the Idea Roastery. I'm Herman.
And I'm Jason.
And Jason, as we spoke about last week, you've got a bunch of free time on your hands right now. Have you been working out?
I have indeed. I've got the luxury of having just recently quit my 9 to 5. And I think one of the main reasons for doing that, or one of the main things I've now been afforded to do, is to focus a lot more of my time on fitness. It's something I think that as a person who does like a normal regular job, it becomes tricky in a sense to have a regimented fitness regime. And I guess when you've got no other things to do other than to fiddle around on the internet, you just give yourself the time to have at least some structure, right? I've actually really been enjoying it, but I think I've noticed that I'm not as fit as I thought I was, first of all, because when you go from maybe once or twice a week, after work, before work, doing a gym session to, what I've been doing, which is, between 4 and 5 days a week, you kind of realize, oh shit, like I haven't actually been either really working hard enough, or I've just like been letting myself go a bit too much between those 2 days of working hours in my job. I think it would be cool to have the discussion now because you have been doing the fitness thing for a lot longer and more consistently. And I want to see if you have any differences in the way that you approached fitness, because obviously now you're like, I think you started your fitness journey about 2-3 years ago, maybe even more, maybe 6 years ago.
More, yeah. Although I became a lot more focused on it about 2 years ago, but I've always been fairly active and fairly interested in it. But it was only about 4 years ago that I started taking an active effort, and then 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, where I started doing all the really nerdy stuff. Like I've done nothing over the past year but read scientific journals on hypertrophy training, and I listen to a podcast with, Dr. Eric Trexler and Dr. Mike Israetel, and just hear about how to become the most jacked boy I can.
So what is that journey to you? Like 10 years ago, let's go back. Would you think that you'd be in this mindset that you are now? Or was it always something that you thought of, like you needed to do, or is it something that there was like a particular point where you realized that this is something I need to focus on versus what you might have thought as a teenager, like early 20s kind of dude?
Well, so as a teenager, if you're reasonably active, I was rock climbing and stuff like that. Like you just put on muscle super easily and you recover from injury. You like, pull your shoulder and you're like, jam my shoulder. And then next week you go back into the climbing gym and you're perfectly fine. Whereas now I'm firmly over 30. I've become a lot more forward thinking. Firstly, I really like the aesthetic of getting into shape. I've always been how would you say it, like a tall, skinny athlete. But now I'm actually putting on a decent amount of muscle mass, and really like working my joints through a full range of motion to make sure that I'm like real world strong, that I'm resilient to injury. And I think that's the big one, for me, is being injured sucks. And so if I can sort of bulletproof my knees and my shoulders against injury, then that will be great. Because I think what happens with a lot of people is they get an injury at some point in their life, and then it bothers them for years, and it becomes the reason to not go and exercise. You're like, oh, I can't go and exercise because my knee hurts. Whereas I want to get to the point where it becomes very difficult for me to injure my knee, right?
Yeah.
So predominantly over the last couple of years, my focus has been on building strength and muscle mass, with cardiovascular fitness taking a bit of a sideline. I still go hiking and stuff for cardio, and when you go and you do like a heavy leg session in the gym, you're working out your cardiovascular system as well. You're grasping for breath, your entire body is put under stress. But I spend, let's take for instance, very little time on the treadmill.
I think I mean, for me, during university, I did go to the gym somewhat irregularly. I kind of shied away from like big heavy equipment. I guess I did like maybe some like movement of the arms, and but I never did like deadlifts, or I never did like, you know, overhead presses and all of these kind of things that I thought were like destined for bodybuilders, or like, you know, I didn't see myself as like you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I was like, well, I just want to, you know, do a bit of running, do a bit of like the weights, and
Let
maybe
me just interrupt you there for 1 second. I remember similarly with me in high school, there was like this narrative that it's like if you work out, you're just going to get really big and you're going to become muscle bound and you're going to, you know, not have mobility because your muscles are going to be so big. And I think the main reason for that is that it wasn't common knowledge that all of these huge muscular dudes like your Arnold
yeah.
Schwarzeneggers, you know, they were all on like an entire pharmacy of steroids, testosterone,
Yeah.
all kinds of anabolics.
Whoa, whoa,
Um,
whoa. I think Arnie was
like
like
you
clean, right? But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
he just took the drugs really well. Like but like the fact of the matter is that if you take a look at some of the um top or some of the top athletes in the world, just in general, right? These are people who train for, especially with the, you know, Olympics coming up, like they train for 6 hours a day,
Hmm.
with a couple days off per week. And they are the most mobile, the most fit, and the most strong people in pretty much history.
Hmm.
They are not muscle bound. They
Yeah.
are not at a detriment because of it. So it is, I just wanted to, I had
Yeah.
the same, there was this pervasive narrative that
Yeah.
it's like, oh, if you build muscle, if you build too much muscle, it's like,
Yeah.
trust me, you're not going to build too much
Yeah.
muscle. It's
Exactly.
really difficult.
But yeah, for sure. I think it's also like it's the information access has changed. I think we have like some prominent. I think podcasting just in general took off, and like we've got some prominent podcasters who talk about these kind of things. So I think like my mindset back then was also like I think almost in a sense you were stuck into your phenotype. You're like, well, you're like a skinny dude. You're quite tall, so you're probably good at running, and you should probably do like long distance running and those kind of things, or like walking, but you shouldn't be like lifting too much because you're probably going to hurt, like snap your muscle, snap your bones or something like that. So I think it was almost like, you know, self pushing yourself into that boundary and not really knowing like all of these extra things that we've now got access to. So I think compared to that to now is obviously, yeah, I think the main thing maybe for both of us is thinking about longevity. And the way that I see it is also like an investment, right? Like we invest our money, like, you know, we want to have that future gain at some point, so we're sort of delaying gratification. And in a sense, I see fitness now is also like a delaying of gratification, in terms of like I can be really lazy now, but if I want to like enjoy, you know, going for walks and stuff later on in life, I should probably at least sacrifice some of the
Mm.
time now to focus on fitness.
So I had to, like, when I started exercising, I had to kind of reframe that mentality as well. I was like, okay, you know, I'm doing something that's good for me, even though it's unpleasant in the moment. But I've come full circle on that. I am like into going into the gym now. It's now a hobby of
Mm.
mine. It's not like a, oh, I better do this because I need to get fit. I'm like all nerdy about it. You know, I'm like checking the different exercise variations, the sets and the reps. I'm doing like progressive overload where I'm just trying to add a little bit of weight to the bar or like get an extra rep in week after week. And it's like a little optimization game that
Mm.
I play. You know, how do you structure your workouts so that your specific muscle groups have enough time to recover before you hit them again in the next session sometime that week and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's like I like it started out as a, okay, I'm going to delay that gratification so that when I'm older, I'm going to be mobile and strong and I won't crack my hip. Whereas now I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to go and try out this new uh, chest press variation because I feel like it's going to put my pecs into like a really
Yeah.
stretched position when I push
How
it.
long do you think it took to get there? Because I think a lot of people who start, and particularly me, I do recognize. I think first of all, mindset is very important, but I recognize that in the state that I am now, like I'm not as fit as I'd like to be. There's almost like a transition, right, where you go from doing nothing to it really sucking, and like you just trying to build that habit of going to the gym. You're trying to build some intensity in the kind of weights you can do. Like, when I started out, I was just doing like fives, right? Like, let's start slow, like build myself up. It's not great. It's particularly cardio I really dislike doing. But how long did it take you from starting to like starting to like
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the process of it? Was it like years? Was it like months? Or
Uh, let's say it took me probably a year before it didn't feel like effort to do it. And then it took me another year before I got like into it. Right. So it's like, the first year I'm like, I'm looking for excuses to not do it. And there's always a good excuse to not exercise. It's not like making up excuses. There's always a good excuse to not exercise because you don't prioritize it. So what I just had to come up with is like, hey, uh, there will always be a good excuse, but I'm going to go and do it anyway, right? But I also think that one
yeah.
of the biggest problems with people trying to get into fitness is that they try to do too much too soon. So they will set a New Year's resolution. They're going to say, "Hey, I'm going to get into shape," and they overshoot what their capabilities are, right? They'll say, I'm going to start going to the gym every weekday, right? Or like,
Mm,
team no days off, right? That's a terrible idea. Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. Because the first day that you go into a gym,
mm,
and if you work out to a reasonable level of intensity, you're going to be so sore that you're not going to want to come in the next day,
yeah.
right? Right now, I'm working out 5 days a week, right? And I am pushing my body
Mm-hmm.
to the limit of what it is capable of during that session. Like I'm going to failure on all of my movements and I don't get stiff anymore. Like
Mm,
I I am trying my best to get stiff the next day, and the only part of my body that gets stiff are my hamstrings. Everything else, like I can take it fully to
mm,
failure and they just don't get stiff. But
mm,
first couple of days in the gym, you're going to have what's called like a novel stimulus for your muscles. And your muscles are going to get really sore if you push them really hard. And so the general advice is to ramp into it, right? If you have been completely sedentary for, forever or for months, years, just start going into the gym once per week for 45 minutes. Do a full body workout where you do resistance training, one push, one pull, one legs, one abs, and then hop in the gym sauna if you've got one, go home. Do that again the next week. And
yeah.
then after a month, up it to 2 sessions a week. And then you can keep doing like 2 sessions a week.
Mm,
You can keep doing that forever if you really want to. It's an interesting topic of study in the exercise community right now. It's called the uh, I forget the exact acronym, but it's like minimum viable stimulus. What is the minimum amount of work that you need to do in order to make gains? Not to maintain, but to make gains. And that works out to, and this will vary from person to person, but 2 days a week where you do a good full body exercise um, with
mm,
decent intensity, you can continue making gains year after year. It's just going to be very slow gains. It won't be optimal gains. It'll be slow gains. So I like to think Monday and Thursday are really good because it spreads it out throughout the week as well as possible. Um, but yeah, first couple of days that you go into the gym, just like ease into it. Don't get stiff. You want to like
yeah.
associate it with, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you come in the next time, oh, that wasn't so bad. And before you know it, you're just like deadlifting 200 kgs. You're a
Yeah.
Karaoke grizzly shouting at the sky.
I think time is the most important. Yeah, other than mindset, I think time is important to think about. And it's almost linked because you kind of have to put yourself into that enjoyment of the process mindset that you say you have now. Like, you enjoy the process of working out. And I think it's also understanding that it does take time. So when I'm going in, I know that I'm like shit now. Well, I think it's also like because we're guys, and like I think guys and girls have different mindsets in the gym. We obviously like compare ourselves, and we're like, oh, I want to be able to beat up that guy, or like, can I arm wrestle this dude here right now if I wanted to?
I mean, girls are comparing themselves to each other a lot more than
Yeah, that's true.
I'd say a lot more than guys actually.
But not in terms of the amount that they can bench or something, like, or like how big their bicep is. So but I think it's a like I think understanding where you are in that journey and the time that it takes, right? Because as early 30-year-olds, we like our main goal is like fitness when we're older, right? So that means that we're committed to this journey until we're like 60, 70,
Yeah.
or whenever we pass away, right? Basically. So like those gains will come over time. And I think that's almost like, in a sense, like just hoping for that process to work out. You don't know if it's going to work out in the long term, but you're kind of committed to it anyway. You're doing some sort of work now, but those gains will come over time. So I'm not worried necessarily about building loads and loads of muscle like in the first 3 months that I've started doing exercise, right?
But you will.
I will, yeah, but I'm accepting.
Like that's actually like the most stimulative portion of time is going to be the first couple of months because your body's like primed and ready to do that.
Yeah, but I think also like when it comes to some other things, like I guess the muscle density and like bone density and like those kind of things, because I think a lot of the literature about mortality related to lack of fitness is fractures of bones and just yeah,
Sarcopenia, the like, yeah.
those kind of things. Which, you know, if you've got weak bones, then that's going to take time to sort of heal up as well. So, and also like the other factor, which is like fucking up your back, man. Like like you don't want to
Yeah.
do a deadlift too early if you're not ready for it, and then suddenly you've got back problems, and then that
Mm.
can almost like inflict you as much.
A lot of bodybuilders actually don't do deadlifts anymore, for a couple of reasons. So there's a thing that was coined by Dr. Mike Israetel at RP Strength called the stimulus to fatigue ratio. And so the idea, a good exercise would have really high muscle stimulus, so it stimulates muscle growth robustly, but it doesn't fatigue your central nervous system and your body excessively. And so while the deadlift is a great exercise for building muscle and it creates a lot of stimulus, it also brings with it a lot of fatigue, right? And it also has a slightly higher risk of injury than other posterior chain exercises. And so bodybuilders who, this is their career, they go in there, they lift heavy. Some of them love doing deadlifts, but a lot of them will just, instead of doing a deadlift, they will, so the deadlift works pretty much your entire posterior chain, your back muscles, lower back, glutes, hams, and quads a little bit, and your calves. Whereas you can hop onto a leg curl machine, do some leg curls for quads, hop onto the hyperextension chair for glutes and lower back. You can do some rows for upper back. And in each of those cases, the limiting factor for the muscle is that muscle itself. So the way that muscles grow is they become stimulated, right? You bring them as close to failure as possible. Now, with the deadlift, you can't exactly say which muscle is failing because it's your entire body is just like absolutely shot. Whereas when you do a bicep curl, you know that it's your bicep that is burning, and now you can't lift it anymore. And so if you were working out each individual muscle of your posterior chain isolated, you'd be able to stimulate it better and take it closer to failure. And you'd also walk out of the gym at the end of the session not being absolutely spent. So I actually, when I say I don't deadlift, I do stiff-legged deadlifts, but I do stiff-legged deadlifts at a low weight, and I do it explicitly to target my hamstrings, but I don't do like heavy deadlifts, just because they wipe me out. They wipe me out, and then I don't want to go back to the gym the next day.
Yeah, like, and these are all the kind of like nuanced parts, because I think also like if you're working out every muscle group like individually, it probably also takes time, right? I don't know, like the trade-off. And I don't know, what do you think about like
Compound movements, especially if you're a beginner, is like compound movements are the best way to go into it. I actually, I'd say if you're only working out twice per week, you have to do compound movements, right? So
Yeah.
I would do one pull exercise, so that could be like a lat pull down or a row. One push exercise, so that could be like a bench press or a chest press machine or something like that. Then either a squat or a leg press, so that you're going to get your quads and stuff, and then a leg curl machine to get your hamstrings. And then you can do like a shoulder isolation and an ab isolation, like lateral side raises and some sit-ups. And that over there, you've pretty much worked out your entire body, right? Um, and if you do just that for a year, twice a week, hey, you're gonna get great results. There's a I was watching this YouTube video by this chef, and he said that like the cooking internet and the gymming internet is very similar because people get into the dumbest arguments. They will argue about uh, what the best way to do something is. And the fact of the matter is that there are so many ways to do anything that, and no one is entirely right. Like some people um, are more optimized than other people, sure. But like if you're doing a lateral side raise, it's like, do you put your thumb up or do you put your pinky up? It's like, well, both of them are going to work your shoulder, but if you put your pinky up, it's more going to work your mid delt, and if you put your thumb up, it's more going to work your front delt. But if you just do lateral side raises and you don't care about any of that, you're going to grow big shoulders, right? And so, if you do CrossFit, hey, that's going to be great, but you're going to, throw up at least once or
Yeah,
twice.
yeah. I tell you build the capacity. I think it's because there's also like a stamina element in there too. I think like getting closer to like a wrap up. I think like the main thing is I guess getting started, right? Is um like whatever you're comfortable with. I also starting to build that mindset of like why you want to do these kind of things, because at the end of the day you are in some way sacrificing, although there are ways to get around the sacrifice, like doing joint classes with friends and stuff, because I think a lot of people see it as like, oh well, I'm going to focus on fitness but I'm going to like drop all my other responsibilities. And obviously, yeah, like not everyone has like the luxury of time, like some people have kids and dependents and stuff like that. But then you might just have to give up a little bit of social media and wake up a little bit earlier and go in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about the amount of time that you have spent over the last week, like watching movies and series,
Mm.
right? I don't even know if you watch movies and series much, but like it's probably more than you went to the gym last week.
It's about this idea of personal responsibility. Is like uh I think I see the way I see it is that like it's my body and no one else is gonna like look after it better than myself. And unfortunately you're gonna have to make sacrifices now to enjoy some of the fruits later. Although medicine is great, we might not have like the best medicine to fix whatever you have now. So I think it's just a good investment strategy just to take it on now. The other side, I guess, is also taking it easy. Also, like not just taking it easy, but before that is I think when you started, you used a personal trainer, and I think that can also be a sort of accelerant because they know a lot more than you might know.
And it's also that accountability. And I think the
Mm,
accountability is actually the biggest one. When you're not that into exercising, having someone who is waiting for you, preferably like I don't want to say he's not my friend, he is my friend, but he's not my friend first, right?
mm,
And so like if you and your friend are like, hey, we're gonna work out together, and then your friend's like, I can't really make it today, and then you're like, I guess I'm not going to gym. Nice thing about a personal trainer is he's been paid. He's there. He's waiting
mm.
for you. If you cancel, you are wasting his time and you're wasting your money,
Yeah,
right? And so
exactly.
there's like a high incentive for you to be at the gym.
Yeah, and also they will be able to give you the most a more effective exercise, right? Because like some people don't know the difference between compounds and lifting, and
Yeah.
or maybe they've just been told like cardio is the only thing to do, and so
I
that
mean, I've also seen some really bad personal trainers like
I
at the
mean,
gym.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
what are you making your poor clients do?
Yeah, I mean, it's also important, like I guess, like do your own research, but I'm also considering people who don't have the most amount of time to focus on it. The other thing I think is rest. I think it's important to give your body time to recuperate. I don't know what your viewpoint on rest is. Do you take like a week off every couple of weeks, or do you just go intensely every week?
So if you are only working out 2 to 3 times a week or 1 to 3 times a week, you don't need to take deload periods, right? Your deload is built into your week, right? Um, if you are training at a very high level, you're training 5 days a week, 6 days a week, you start accumulating systemic fatigue. and that builds up over a period of time. But this is like advanced stuff, and most new like people who are new in the gym do not have to think about this at all. But once you're training over, 4 or 5 days a week, you build up this systemic fatigue over 6 weeks, roughly give or take 2 weeks, depending on how heavy you're lifting and how strong you are. And then it's important to take what's called a deload week, where you either do just nothing or you go into the gym and you do a little bit of mobility work and you chill out in the sauna, just to let that fatigue dissipate. And then you come back and you're really strong again and you ramp up. I know that RP Strength refers to these as mesocycles. So you start out with like not going entirely to failure. So you're lifting within like 3 repetitions in reserve, and then you just ramp it up over the 6 weeks until like the week before you deload, you're really like putting it balls to the wall, giving it everything you got, and then you take some time off to rest, recover, and then hop back into it again. But again, you don't really need to think about deloads if you're training 2 to 3 days a week.
Yeah, and I think it's like part of the journey, right? The intensity of the exercise kind of matches the intensity of how into
Yeah.
the exercise regime you are, right?
I'll end on two notes, just two like little tips and tricks. Or these aren't even tips and tricks. This is like fundamental. But um, if you're gonna lift with good technique. As soon as you start cheating, you're not stimulating the muscle that you are trying to stimulate as well as you could be. And you're also opening yourself up to injury. And again, injury is the worst, is what we're trying to avoid in the first place. You hurt your back deadlifting, like you done that to yourself,
Yeah.
right? And then the second one is lift through a full range of motion. Go like fully stretched position all the way through the top, go back down. Get this way, you're getting both mobility and you're getting flexibility and strength. And mobility is just flexibility and strength. It's strength inside of those flexed positions. And if you are lifting through a full range of motion, you don't even really have to do like flexibility exercises because you're already doing that while you're lifting.
And for me, I'd say there's maybe two. We haven't talked about it really much in this episode, but one is like nutrition, like making sure that you've got enough food. I think we've had previous episodes where we've talked about protein as being a lot more important than what we maybe previously thought. So making sure that you like alongside whatever routine you're doing, that you're also, you're not eating McDonald's burgers and, junk, and then trying to like get gains at the gym, right? Like those things are incompatible. And the other thing is just not, I think, trying to not compare yourself. I think when you go to the gym, because obviously there's people that have that are
been training for 10 years.
Like you don't know their journey as well. Like, because sometimes you see bodybuilders and they're like super ripped, but they just doing repetitions every day. Like every day they're doing like reps.
Also, professional bodybuilders, unless explicitly stated, they are on steroids. Like people need to know
Well,
this. They are.
we come from South Africa. There's some pretty built rugby players and stuff, right? So like you can't see, they're not on steroids,
Yeah,
like definitely
they're
not.
not on
But
steroids.
I mean, you mustn't compare yourself. And I think that it's important to just enjoy the process, right? Because knowing that it's going to take multiple years to get to where you want to go, I think that's important to keep in mind as you do your fitness journey.
Yeah, enjoy the journey.